G'day guys and gal. Tyranids are the big bad of Warhammer 40k, not the obnoxious demons, the promiscuous space elves, or the sentient mushrooms. No, it's 100% the Tyranids, purely due to the fact that they seem to be basically infinite in number, and the hive fleets that have already caused so much destruction have been mostly referred to as merely scouts. On top of this, every single victory against the Tyranids, and yes there has been many, have mostly been Pyrrhic, with the victors often suffering greatly. Farsight's home planet, Craftworld Liandon, and even the Ultramarines' capital of World of Macragge have felt the fury of the Tyranids and been left permanently scarred or even destroyed. To make matters worse, the Tyranids upload all their data and knowledge to a hive mind, meaning they are only getting more and more effective at invading the galaxy. The Silent King, a dude who has been alive for 65 million years and has even travelled beyond the Milky Way, has pinpointed the Tyranids as by far the #1 threat in the universe. Case in point, Spacebugs of Death OP. But we aren't here to wank off the lethality of the Tyranids, there's already a video for that. Instead, we are going to go over all the currently known Tyranid hive fleets that currently are or have plagued the galaxy in the past. Before we get started, 200k is just a flick of the dick away. Hey, that rhymes. So if you laugh, smile, jerk off, or prolapse at any point in this video, then consider tapping that juicy red button. At 200k, I'll release the new Majorkill merch, as well as do another drunk live stream, which is great for your entertainment and my wallet, but incredibly detrimental to my liver. Let's get into it. There are two ways a hive fleet can form. Either they arrive in the Milky Way ready to go, or a fragment of a hive fleet splits off, eats a bunch of planets, then grows to such a size that they become a hive fleet in their own right. First on this list is the first Tyranid hive fleet to officially grace the galaxy, Hive Fleet Behemoth. It's also the first hive fleet alphabetically, so you OCD demons should be getting a great kick out of that. The arrival of Behemoth was very spicy, as neither side knew the other's strengths and weaknesses. There was a lot of Leroy Jenkins tier charging, and a lot of people died, due to poor decisions. Many worlds were eaten, and billions suffered before the Tyranids encountered the Ultramarines. Now the Ultramarines were using an extremely outdated book to fight a new enemy, and they initially failed miserably. They had to reassess their tactics and slap themselves for getting too biblical on a book that was only designed as a basic guideline. The Ultramarines once again engaged the Hive Fleet, and despite getting a solid pounding, they were Ultramarines, hence Behemoth was doomed. The Hive Fleet was destroyed, and the Ultramarines went off to have an Ultra Sook. Whilst the Imperium learnt a lot about the Tyranids from the encounter with Behemoth, the Tyranids learnt a shitload more about the Imperium. Hence their next Hive Fleet Kraken, came in hot and caused an insane amount of damage, way more than Behemoth did. Kraken used gene stealer cults to weaken the defenses on Imperial planets, and then it split up its forces into splinter fleets, who would go off and consume poorly defended worlds, whilst the main force would focus on the more difficult nuts to crack. This was working incredibly well, and it looked like it could end up bringing the Imperium to its knees. For some reason, the Tyranids decided that this strategy was too overpowered and that they felt bad for the Imperium, hence they reunited all their splinter fleets to put their entire force against a single planet. The Ultramarines arrive, do their ultra shit, and the majority of Kraken goes kaput. The remaining Hive Fleet of Kraken then heads to Craftworld Liandon and skullfucks the shit out of it, wiping out most of it and only just being beaten back at the last minute by Prince Uriel wielding an overpowered God Spear, hence the end of Hive Fleet Kraken. But you better believe the Tyranids weren't done yet, boyo! Hence the largest hive fleet has recently arrived, Hive Fleet Leviathan. The war with Leviathan is ongoing and will take multiple battles to end, as this is kinda doing what Kraken did. The Imperium has scored a few wins against this bad boy, with Inquisitor Critman going balls to the walls to stop this invasion. He literally plotted the course of the Hive Fleet and exterminated all the planets in their trajectory to deny the Tyranids resources. Obviously this is a bad look. Imperial planets going kaput is never ideal. However, when they were blown up, the Orcs came in to claim these now dead defenseless worlds. When that happened, Critman got the boot. His tactics actually worked out pretty well though, as the Orcs that took over the planets became really powerful and now act as a hectic bulwark against the Tyranids, blocking their advance in a never-ending war. It was Hive Fleet Leviathan who invaded Baal and nearly wiped out the Blood Angels, and even when the Blood Angels, with the aid of, you guessed it, the Ultramarines won and slaughtered the Tyranids, the Hive Fleet was like, heh, that was just the tendril of the fleet, the best is yet to come. Now whilst Behemoth was the Tyranids' first official invasion of the galaxy, various small Tyranid fleets had entered earlier, either due to warp spaghetti or just being fast. The first of this was Hive Fleet Ouroboros. Maybe There has been some retconning, such as the Tyranids' lack of ability to use warp spaghetti, which might change this, but it doesn't matter. Basically, it seems that Ouroboros came to the galaxy sometime in the 36th millennium and were a massive pain in the ass. A huge Imperial crusade spearheaded by the Space Wolves were able to clap Ouroboros' cheeks and send them to the Shadow Realm. However, it seems that a handful of ships from Ouroboros were able to survive and enter into hibernation. They have recently awoken and are now once again being a giant pain in the ass. Highfleet Tiamat is an interesting one that also seemingly arrived before Behemoth. Tiamat, however, wasn't interested in invasion or war or pew pew. Tiamat just wanted to be a farmer, hence came in and seeded a cluster of worlds with life. Never mind that life was extremely hostile and basically only existed to be consumed by Tyranids at a later date. The next Hive fleet is very niche and potentially not even canon. Hive Fleet Colossus. Basically, this was a Hive fleet that was in command of the Zotes. The Zotes had escaped from their Tyranid masters who had used them as diplomats. Yeah, like I said, probably not canon. However, being any colour other than black, white or yellow in the Imperium is a no-no, hence the Zotes were attacked and exterminated. Sorry, Colossus. The Imperium had been copying the blunt of the Tyranid invasions a bit hard, and the Tyranids knew this and were sorry, hence they sent in Hive Fleet Naga with the sole purpose of fucking over the Eldar. After chowing down on some Eldar maiden worlds, Hive Fleet Naga was eventually put down by a combination of like 3 craft worlds. Naga was considered a small Hive fleet. Tyranids OP. Eldar, hated by GW. All the Hive fleets I've mentioned so far have been original fleets that entered the galaxy. However, when a splinter fleet of a Hive fleet gets big enough, they get their own cute name from ancient mythology. Hence we have Hive Fleet Dagon, who is believed to have been a splinter of Hive Fleet Behemoth. This fleet has been nothing but a headache for the Imperial forces of the Jericho Reach, and by a headache I mean a full-on brain tumour. It's taking a massive amount of effort from the Death Watch to keep this Hive fleet in check, and the conflict rages on. Or maybe it doesn't. I don't know, the law hasn't gone there yet. Whilst Dagon went to go clap more Imperials, Hive Fleet Gorgon, another splinter of Behemoth, went down to eat some of that big titty Tau girlfriend. However, the Tau were fiercely protective of their girlfriends, hence put up a mighty resistance. Both sides of the war were constantly adapting and changing to better suit their opponent. For example, when the Tau focused on long-range bombardment and their pulse weapons, Gorgon would shit out Tyranids that suited to that, and so on. Eventually the Hive fleet was destroyed when the Tau and the Imperium teamed up. Nothing brings races together like a terrifying common enemy, am I right? The extreme variety of weaponry and tactics across the Imperial Guard and the Tau armies were too much for Dagon to adapt to, hence the Hive fleet said sayonara, which means they died. The Hive fleet died. Chaos created a unique issue for the Tyranids. Demons have no biomass and they vanish upon death, hence battles against them were always costly due to a lack of bio-profit. As such, the Tyranids avoided chaos like they avoided Necrons. However, since Abaddon's poor sportsmanship resulting in a Blackstone fortress being thrown at Cadia, hence resulting in a big-ass demon scar across the galaxy, chaos is becoming very difficult to ignore. Hence Hive Fleet Kronos was created, a special Hive fleet that utilizes long-range weaponry as well as an extra powerful warp nullifying aura, 2 things that demons fucking hate. Kronos gets flung at chaos on the daily, often popping up mid-battle, ignoring the non-chaos side and just going straight for the demons. Although Kronos still can't eat demons for biomass, hence still can't really profit off its battles, it gets around this issue by following a splinter fleet of Hive Fleet Leviathan, which invades worlds, destroys their defenses, then leaves their vulnerable biomass for Kronos to swing by and consume. Very considerate of them. Not all Hive fleets are so wildly successful though. Hive Fleet Scarabeus fought against Cadian shock troopers in a siege battle. Scarabeus got completely sodomized, whilst the Cadians barely lost any men. In a similar fate, Hive Fleet Locust was clapped by some Ultramarines during an ill-fated invasion of an Imperial world. Yeah, look, if you have a Hive Fleet which is named after an insect instead of an ancient mythological beast or deity, you probably aren't going to achieve much. Sometimes Hive Fleets pick the wrong meals, like when Hive Fleet Lowton engaged the armies of the Death Guard on a jungle planet. Both sides were bombing the shit out of each other, with all kinds of bioweapons and plagues. Eventually the battle became so toxic that the atmosphere seized and the world turned into toxic sludge. When the Tyranids absorbed some of the sludge into one of their ships, the ship began to seizure and die and was actually blown apart by other ships in its fleet. Needless to say, Lowton did not end up getting a feed that day. Next up is Hive Fleet Perseus, cause fuck naming conventions I guess. Hive Fleet Perseus fought the Ultramarines. I'm sure you can fill in the rest. Now we have Hive Fleet Megalodon, which is a splinter of Highfleet Kraken and just kind of exists and eats people and yeah. Tyranid lore isn't the most fleshed out. They can't exactly do a POV book of some Tyranid dude for obvious reason. Next up is Highfleet Jorgamundir, which I definitely mispronounced, because apparently they ran out of Greek monsters so they had to go further up north. Jori, as I'll call it because I'm lazy, has had a bit of fun since its arrival. It acted smart, targeting lightly defended worlds to build up an impressive massive bio. Its highlight is definitely when there was a Space Marine chapter which had half gone renegade and was in the midst of a civil war. During the battle, Jori came to eat, and the chapter called a truce and agreed to tackle on the new foe together. Now in normal stories, this would result in the good guys and the bad guys coming together and beating the worst guys. But not in Warhammer, baby! The Space Marines got fucked and were massacred. The ones that escaped were soon hunted down. This is why I love Warhammer. Now on to Highfleet Medusa. This cheeky monkey thought the ice world of Shadrach would be a nice little meal. I don't know why it thought that, the world was made of fucking ice, but either way they found themselves fighting against the Space Wolves, which ended very poorly for old mate Medusa. Another pretty irrelevant fleet, we now have Highfleet Pythos, who fought some Space Marines and yeah, coolio. The name Moloch is very overused in Warhammer 40k. It's the name of a significant planet, the name of the Alpha Space Marine Spartan himself, and it's also the name of a high fleet. Moloch was on the way to chow down a planet that contained an STC. Now despite that sounding like an unpleasant form of genital wart, it's actually a super handy blueprint that the Mechanicus wanks themselves off to, hence a large army of guardsmen, including Kadachan jungle fighters and Moridian Iron Guard, sacrificed themselves so the Mechanicus could scuttle away with their prize. Moloch would continue to be a pain in the ass for various Imperial Guard regiments, and scored a draw against the 9th of Austrian Firstborn Regiment. By draw, I mean absolutely everyone died. Next up is Highfleet Ophida, who was big and strong and scary until it wasn't, and is now mostly destroyed with a couple ships still floating around, in case anyone actually painted their Tyranid army in Ophida's colours. The Dark Eldar are incredibly intelligent, but also extremely reckless. Often their recklessness outperforms their intelligence. Such was the awakening of Highfleet Naga. This Highfleet was asleep and was discovered by the Dark Eldar. Instead of blasting it to smithereens, they decided to board it and capture sleeping Tyranids so they could experiment on them and shit. Unsurprisingly, Tyranids don't really like being boarded, hence the Highfleet quickly awoken and the Dark Elder got shat on. I would say there is a lesson to be learned here, but I thought it was common knowledge not to board Tyranid ships for the lols. Next up is a bit of a 2-for-1 deal, Highfleet Charybdis and Scylla. Although separate, these high fleets are both moving in the same direction and are concerningly close to Terra. Now if they got remotely near Terra, they would get absolutely massacred. However, they seem to be moving towards the craft world of Samhan, so unless those speedy boys pack up and leave, they could find themselves in deep shit. Highfleet Emuniadis, I'm pretty sure they're just trying to make my job hard with these names at this point, whilst Anisha not well known, is still making a bit of an impact. It fought against the Tau led by Commander Shadowsun, before then engaging some Space Marines. As the timeline goes forward, more and more Hive fleets are popping up everywhere. Highfleet Chimera, Grendel and Harbinger are just some great examples of this, who haven't yet done anything too spicy, but a Hive fleet is a Hive fleet, so I'm sure some named character has got a Tyranid shaped inconvenience on the horizon. Last but not least, the least would definitely be Highfleet Scarabus, we have Highfleet Proteus. I'm not really sure if this fleet is alive or not. It was heading towards Terra via Inuit. As Inuit was the home of Rogel Dawn and the Imperial Fists, I doubt they will get far. I'm very curious as to what GW does about the Tyranids in the future. As of now, it appears that they have written themselves into a corner, and it's only a matter of time before the galaxy turns into one big Tyranid Parmigiana. And that does us for today, guys, all the Tyranid Hive fleets. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be, where only $1 per month give you access to a boatload of Warhammer hentai. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the real subscribe button for more buggy content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.